Waited for a time when Ajoke was asleep and then drugged her food. Once she fell into a deep slumber, he dug a shallow grave in the middle of the night. Once upon a time, in the heart of the ancient city of Ile-Ife, a bustling town in the western part of Nigeria, there lived an African woman named Ajoke. She was known for her beauty and kind heart. Ajoke was happily married to her husband Ade, who worked as a blacksmith in the marketplace. The couple had been blessed with 3 healthy children, a boy and 2 girls. Life was good for them and Ajoke was content with her life. Ajoke's husband Ade was well known for his craft both far and wide. He loved his wife Ajoke so much, but he had been eyeing her best friend Khadijat for quite some time. Khadijat was also very beautiful and had a kind heart like Ajoke. Ade had often fantasized about being with her. Ade became worried and restless, thinking of a strategic way to achieve his plan to have a taste of Khadijat, his wife's friend. Ajoke, noticing how her husband has started keeping to himself and always thinking, decided to ask if there was a problem. And he replied her saying, "No, my wife, I am just thinking how to make my business bigger, so that when our child comes, I will train her or him how to be a better goodsmith." They both laughed about it, and she prayed his wishes will be granted in due time. Ade has finally been able to hatch a plan to get rid of Ajoke so he could not only have a taste of Khadijat but also marry her. He decided he was going to bury Ajoke alive and claimed that she had died in childbirth. He knew that in Ile-Ife it was not uncommon for a husband to marry his late wife's sister or anyone closest to the late wife to continue the lineage. Ade was confident that no one would suspect him and he would get away with it. He waited for a time when Ajoke was asleep and then drugged her food. Once she fell into a deep slumber, he dug a shallow grave in the middle of the night and he lifted her limp body out of their bed. He felt a pang of guilt but pushed it aside, telling himself that it was for the best. He placed her in the grave and began to cover her up with the loose soil. He didn't want to make too much noise, so he didn't use a shovel. Instead, he used his hand to dig and move the dirt. Ade knew the people of Ile-Ife would not suspect anything until the next day, when they discovered that Ajoke was missing and presumed dead. He also knew that by then he would have had enough time to get Khadijat ready for their new life together. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement mixed with the guilt he carried. As he finished covering up the grave, he noticed a small rock that had been dislodged from the soil. In a moment of panic, he tried to quickly push it back into place, but it wouldn't go. His heart raced as he realized that someone might see it and start asking questions. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. There was nothing he could do now. He had to just hope for the best. He took a walk to Khadijat's house that night and quietly woke up Khadijat. She was confused and disoriented. But when he told her what had happened, she was shocked and horrified. She had never suspected Ade of having feelings for her, let alone wanting to harm Ajoke. They both knew that they had to act fast to cover up the track. Khadijat suggested that Ade should go to the river to wash off the dirt from the grave digging so that they can pretend that they were trying to find Ajoke. She thought this would give them a plausible alibi. Ade agreed, feeling relieved that Khadijat was still willing to go along with his plan. As he walked to the river, Ade couldn't shake off the feeling of guilt. He tried to convince himself that it was for the best, that he was doing this for their future and the future of their children. Khadijat, on the other hand, was torn between her loyalty to Ajoke and her newfound feelings for Ade. She hoped that Ajoke was still alive and would be found soon. They arrived at the river and began washing their hands and feet, pretending to look for Ajoke. The cool water helped calm their nerves, but it also brought clarity to their situation. They both knew that they had to come up with a plan to protect themselves and ensure that their secret remained safe. As they walked back home, Ade's mind raced with ideas. He knew that the people of Ile-Ife would soon begin to ask questions about Ajoke's disappearance. He needed to find someone who could vouch for his whereabouts during the night. He decided to approach his friend Ibrahim and ask for his help. Khadijat, on the other hand, couldn't help but feel guilty for not having done more to save Ajoke. She tried to convince herself that Ade's plan was the best course of action, but the haunting image of Ajoke buried alive wouldn't leave her mind. She decided to pray for Ajoke's soul and hope that Allah would forgive them both. As they approached Ade's friend's hut, Ade nervously cleared his throat and explained the situation to Ibrahim. Ibrahim, a man known for his cunning and resourcefulness, listened intently. He agreed to help them, but only if they promised to repay him in kind. Ade nodded eagerly, grateful for Ibrahim's support. Meanwhile, Khadijat paced back and forth, her heart racing. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. As they waited for Ibrahim to return with a plan, she tried to calm herself, repeating a prayer under her breath. It was nearly dawn when Ibrahim finally returned. He met them outside, his face a mask of relief. "I have a plan," he whispered. "We'll need to leave immediately." Without another word, they set about executing Ibrahim's scheme. Khadijat helped Ade gather a few possessions, trying to keep her hands from trembling. She knew that what they were about to do was wrong, but she couldn't bring herself to abandon Ade now. As they crept out of the village, abandoning Ade's kids, she wondered if she would ever see her old life again. Ibrahim led them through the dense forest, as he knew the path very well. The sun was starting to rise, casting long shadows across their path. Ade and Khadijat walked together, their shoulders brushing occasionally, a silent understanding between them. They both knew that they were now fugitives, running from the law and the wrath of the people they had left behind. The journey was long and arduous, and they often had to hide during the day, fearing discovery. At night, they would find makeshift shelters in the forest, trying to catch what little sleep they could. The weight of their guilt was a constant presence, a leaden ball in their stomach that threatened to drag them down into the depths of despair. Khadijat found herself thinking often of Ajoke, wondering if she had suffered before her death. She wished there had been some other way, some alternative that wouldn't have left them in this desperate situation. Ade tried to comfort her, but his own thoughts were consumed by worry about their future. They both knew that they were running out of time and options. One day, as they were hiding, they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Their hearts raced as they crouched low, fearing discovery. But to their surprise, it was Ibrahim. He had returned, his face graved. He informed them that the search for Ajoke has been called off. The people of Ile-Ife had all but given up hope of finding her alive. They decided to continue with their plan. They began to feel more at ease in the forest, navigating its dangers and secrets with the help of Ibrahim. They managed to find temporary work, trading goods and services with other travelers who passed through their hideouts. Despite their efforts to leave their past behind, the weight of their guilt still lingered. Ade could not shake the image of Ajoke's terrified face as she was buried alive, and Khadijat could not forgive herself for not having done more to save her. They often found themselves discussing the situation, wondering if they would ever be able to find peace. One night, as they lay together in their makeshift bed, Khadijat felt a gentle touch on her cheek. Startled, she opened her eyes to see Ajoke's spirit hovering above her. The girl's eyes were filled with very bright light, and a faint smile curved her lips. "I am not angry with you," Ajoke said softly. "You both did what you thought was best. I only wanted to thank you." Khadijat and Ade exchanged confused glances. "Thank us?" Ade asked. "For what?" Ajoke's spirit floated gracefully, shimmering in the dim light. "For giving me a purpose," she said. "You see, I was trapped in that hole, alone and afraid. But now, my spirit can remain here to protect the ones I love from ever suffering the way I did. I can watch over my children and guide them and make sure they are safe." Ibrahim, who had been listening silently from a distance, stepped forward. "You mean us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ajoke nodded. "Yes, Ibrahim and Ade and Khadija too. You all played parts in this, whether you meant to or not. And now you all have a choice. You can continue to live in fear, always looking over your shoulders, wondering when the truth will come out, or you can find a way to move forward to live your lives in peace." Khadijat looked at Ade and he at her. They both knew what they had to do. They would find a way to live with the guilt, to honor Ajoke's memory without letting it define them. They would face the world together as a family. Ade, Khadijat and Ibrahim discussed about what had just happened for a while, and Ibrahim stood up to say he was leaving to go catch some sleep. Khadijat and Ade bade him good night. As they slept that night, Ade couldn't take his mind to reflect on how beautiful his life was with Ajoke, but his lust for Khadijat's beauty made him ruin that. He now realizes he now lives a very unhappy life, and a lot of things were going so wrong for him. The thought consumed him and he couldn't help himself but decided to end it all. With tears in his eyes, he stood up and looked at Khadijat, who was fast asleep, and in pretense stood up to go and ease himself in the middle of the night. He went out, looked front and back, looked left and right. Seeing that no one was coming, hung himself to death on the mango tree. He couldn't live with the guilt. Khadijat hadn't noticed he wasn't there till the next morning. When she woke up, she searched for Ade everywhere in the room and came out to see him hanging dead on the tree. She cried her eyes out and realized she has been the biggest loser for not speaking out and for letting her lust for Ade take over her heart. Ibrahim, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found and he was never seen again.